Picture a grey morning in 1888, where the fog clings to the iron railings and the city begins to stir with the rhythmic clip-clop of horse-drawn hansom cabs. The cobblestones are slick with a fine mist, reflecting the pale amber glow of the fading street lamps as the day workers emerge from their brick terrace houses. You are standing on the threshold of a bustling London street, about to enter a world where every step is governed by an invisible, yet ironclad, set of social expectations. To walk upon a Victorian sidewalk was not merely a matter of moving from one point to another, but a performance of character and class. The pavement beneath your feet is made of heavy York stone flagstones, each one hand-carved and laid with a precision that speaks to the era's obsession with order. To maintain this order, the first and most fundamental rule was the strict adherence to the right-hand side of the walkway. Imagine the flow of people moving like a slow-moving river, where any deviation from the right side caused a ripple of social friction. If you were to stray to the left, you risked a collision that would be seen not just as an accident, but as a lack of basic breeding. The air is filled with the soft rustle of silk skirts and the heavy thud of leather-soled boots, creating a white noise that masks the distant shouts of street vendors. This rule of keeping to the right ensured that the city could breathe, preventing the chaotic tangles that might otherwise occur in a metropolis of millions. As you walk, you notice how the crowd parts around the stationary objects of the street, like lampposts and post boxes, with a mechanical efficiency. There is a strange comfort in this predictability, a sense that as long as you follow the path, the world remains in its proper place. The second rule of the sidewalk was the gentleman's wall, a practice rooted in the practical dangers of 19th century urban life. When a man and a woman walked together, the man was strictly required to walk on the side closest to the street, or the gutter. This was not merely a gesture of chivalry, but a defensive maneuver against the hazards of the roadway. The streets of the Victorian era were not the clean asphalt paths we know today, but were often filled with mud, refuse, and the constant splashing of carriage wheels. By placing himself between the lady and the curb, the gentleman acted as a shield against the filth that might be flung up by a passing omnibus. The scent of the street is a complex mixture of damp earth, horse manure, and coal smoke, but by the wall, the air feels slightly more protected. If a man were to walk on the inside, he would be signaling to all observers that he was either ignorant of his duties or indifferent to the lady's well-being. This subtle positioning was a language spoken by everyone who traversed the city, a constant visual cue of protection and respect. As you walk, observe how the couples maintain this alignment with a graceful, synchronized stride that seems almost choreographed. The third rule concerned the management of groups, specifically the prohibition against blocking the narrow walkways of the inner city. It was considered the height of rudeness for a group of 3 or more people to walk abreast, effectively creating a wall that others could not pass. In the Victorian mind, the sidewalk was a public artery, and to clog it with idle conversation was a transgression against the communal good. If a party of friends met on the street, the expectation was that they would either move to a less crowded side street or continue walking while they spoke. The sound of their voices would drift through the air, muffled by the heavy coats and scarves worn to ward off the morning chill. To stand still in the center of the flow was to declare one's own importance over the time and needs of every other citizen. Observe how when 2 groups meet, they momentarily collapse into single file, a fluid motion that allows them to pass one another without breaking the rhythm of their walk. This constant adjustment requires a high level of spatial awareness, a mental map of the moving bodies around you, that becomes second nature over time. The stones beneath you are slightly uneven, requiring a careful, deliberate placement of each foot to avoid a stumble. The fourth rule becomes most apparent when the clouds darken and the inevitable rain begins to fall upon the city streets. This is the protocol of the umbrella, a tool of convenience that could easily become a weapon of annoyance in a crowded space. When passing another pedestrian, it was the duty of the taller person to raise their umbrella high, allowing the shorter person's umbrella to pass underneath. This simple mechanical adjustment prevented the clashing of ribs and the dripping of water down the necks of unsuspecting neighbors. Imagine the forest of black silk umbrellas unfolding across the cityscape, a canopy of protection that moved in a series of dips and lifts. The sound of the rain drumming against the taut fabric is a soothing, repetitive patter that accompanies your every step. To hold one's umbrella at a low angle, blocking the view of those behind or poking into the space of those passing, was a mark of extreme selfishness. There is a quiet dignity in the way the crowd manages the rain, a collective agreement to navigate the wet stones with as little fuss as possible. The dampness brings out the deep greys and blacks of the stone, turning the world into a monochromatic landscape of texture and shadow. The fifth, and perhaps most complex rule, was the cut direct and the etiquette of the silent greeting. In the Victorian world, the sidewalk was a place of high social stakes, where a nod or a tip of the hat could confirm or deny a person's standing. However, the general rule was to avoid unnecessary eye contact with strangers, maintaining a focused but neutral gaze on the path ahead. If you encountered an acquaintance, the degree of your greeting was determined by your previous level of intimacy and your relative social ranks. A gentleman would always wait for a lady to acknowledge him first, a rule that gave women the power to decide who they wished to interact with in public. The movement of the hat, from a full removal to a slight touch of the brim, conveyed a wealth of information in a fraction of a second. To ignore someone you knew without cause was the cut direct, a social execution that could end a friendship or a business relationship instantly. Yet, for the most part, the sidewalk was a place of anonymity, where one could walk in peace, lost in the soft rhythm of their own thoughts. The city is a vast machine of millions of such interactions, each one a tiny gear turning in the grand mechanism of Victorian society. As the sun begins to set, casting long, spindly shadows across the flagstones, the rules of the day transition into the rules of the evening. The pace of the walk slows, the urgency of business replaced by the leisure of the evening stroll. You find yourself focusing on the repetitive nature of your movements, the way your breath mists in the cooling air and the steady, reliable feel of the ground. The Victorian sidewalk was a place of rigid structure, but within that structure, there was a profound sense of safety and predictability. By following these 5 ordinary rules, the citizens of the 19th century created a shared space that functioned with the grace of a well-oiled clock. Now, as the sounds of the Victorian city fade into the distance, let your mind rest on the image of those steady, rhythmic footsteps on the old stone paths. The fog rolls back in, swallowing the shapes of the buildings and the light of the gas lamps, leaving only the quiet memory of the walk. The world is still, the rules are followed, and the path ahead is clear and peaceful. You are walking slowly now, each step heavier and more relaxed than the last, until the city finally falls silent. Sleep now, knowing that the order of the past remains, a silent guide through the shadows of history. The stones are cool, the night is long, and the rhythm of the walk has finally brought you to a place of total rest. Close your eyes and listen to the lingering echo of the leather on stone, a steady heartbeat for the dreaming mind. Discover more history by watching the next video. We're eager to share more with you. You can't go wrong. All our videos are deeply detailed, dull while fascinating, and distinctly sleep-inducing.